Thank you all for coming. My name is Erica Miller. I'm the Deputy Director of Engineering for DPW. We appreciate you all coming and appreciate your interest in this project, which I believe we're calling the White River Innovation District Construction Project. We put together a little bit of a presentation to give you some background on the project and bring you up to speed on where we are now. It's sort of a complicated project. I think at a high level, the city has been trying to redevelop the old GM Stampede plant site for many years. I assume some of you are familiar with some of the previous efforts and possibilities. Where we have landed today, this project really came to fruition after Elanco decided to move their headquarters to the old GM Stampede plant site. That development then initiated an agreement between the city of Indianapolis and the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. Brett Morgan here is with the IBC. So we're in agreement with the IBC and in the Elanco to build certain pieces of infrastructure to accommodate that site and to accommodate future development on the site. That agreement that I referenced sort of outlines who is responsible for building what. There are pieces of infrastructure that the city is responsible for, and there are pieces of infrastructure that the agency is responsible for. The agreement also lays out a schedule for these improvements. I think at a high level, it's fair to say that the Elanco headquarters should be open by the end of 2024. And they will need streets to drive on. So that is our goal. That is our number one priority. As the project has evolved, hopefully some of you have seen different things in the news, and it's become a really pivotal project for the city. The bridge over the White River will be an architecturally significant bridge. I'm going to share some renderings with you, but it's definitely become a really highlight project for the city and probably for the IBC. And I'll like to say,
absolutely. Erica, basically summarized everything that I say. But, I would hope you do. No, I just want to thank everyone again for being here. This is an excellent opportunity for all of you to partner with the state and with the city on what's going to be a generational project. I can honestly say that this is the most compelling project I've got to be a part of, and with all the momentum from yesterday's groundbreaking with the 11 Park on the east side and the expansion of the White River State Park on the west bank of the White River, I think this stands to be truly a landmark for the city of Indianapolis and for the state of Indiana. So very much looking forward to working with you and doing great things for the state and for the city.
As you can see in this top slide, we are working primarily our prime firms right now. Lockmuller is designing the roadways around the site, and WSP is the prime designer for the Henry Street Bridge over the White River. And EF&S, it has been hired to do construction inspections. Wanted to briefly go over the schedule, which is in the RFP. Proposals are due on June 12th. We are going to do our best to get through those quickly so that we can shortlist by June 21st. We'll then be starting a scoping period for those in shortlist and select the final team on August 11th. Our goal is to take the contract to the board on August 23rd. If I haven't imparted this already, I think schedule is going to be the most critical piece to this project. And so those of you who we have worked with before, we're going to do everything we can to keep this moving and get a PO and a notice to proceed right after the I want to pass it to Bob Fry for a few minutes to go over our procurement method, and how we got here.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to stay seated. I think I can talk loud. That's bad. As Erica said, I'm Bob Fry, I'm DPW's legal counsel. Also recognize over here Ben Markle with the City Office Corporation Counsel, which is the city's legal office. The difference between Ben and us, I've embedded in the department. So, I thought I just wanted to take a minute to do a brief overview of BOT. It's not intended to be any kind of BOT seminar, but some of the early questions we got since the RFP came out certainly indicated some confusion maybe about it. And BOT, from my research into it, there does seem to be a lot of confusion out there. So I just wanted to very briefly go over it and hope that will lay the groundwork for why we're attempting to deliver this transformative project in this way. So you probably all know, I assume most of you in the room have done work local governments. We typically always follow traditional design bid build. Again, I don't have to go over that in detail, but as you know, it's design is completely separate from construction. Design bid build, the owner separately designs and then separately contracts for construction, and that process of selecting the constructor is through a sealed bid process, right, with a fixed price based on the plans prepared. BOT, on the other hand, that's just an illustration of the typical how the teams are arranged in the design bid build. BOT, on the other hand, if you want to move on to the other. So I don't want to sit here and read this to you. I've been doing a lot of research on this. BOT is relatively new to the Department of Public Works as far as delivering any kind of infrastructure. We've not really done it this way. But the concept's been around a long time. From my research, it's revealed, frankly, Indiana's had some version of a BOT statute from the late 70s when the Hoosier Bill was built. It's actually a statute passed to get the Hoosier Bill. It's obviously evolved since then. And but I think the beauty of it is that it allows the procurement of a public infrastructure project that would allow one contractor, we call contractor, developer, whatever word you want to use, but one entity that the government contracts with that would potentially design, construct, operate, manage, maintain, and even finance. And that was a lot of the fruition of the statute, is the need for local governments sometimes to finance really large projects. And I often think of the early traditional BOT would be also a public facility that generated revenue, which would generate the funds to pay back the financing and the construction costs. Easy examples are like a stadium where you have ticket sales, a concession stand, parking garage, parking revenue. But increasingly over the years, it's been used for many more wastewater treatment plants, courthouses, school buildings. I personally, because I've mostly worked in this DPW transportation sector, was surprised how many different facilities have actually been built this way in Indiana. So with the sort of complexities of this project, as indicated in the RFP, and we'll talk more about, new terrain roadways being built west of the river, a brand new bridge across the river, and of course the necessary connecting facilities east of the river, having to bring in new utilities, new terrain roads. It's a pretty complex project, right? It's not just a typical DPW road reconstruction project. So we started really looking hard at the BOT as I'm going to try to develop this project. As Erica and Brett laid out, we have commitments to Elanco. If you've driven by it all, you can see they're building well underway. So they got to be able to get there. And we're going to get employees there in a couple of years. So we felt like this was the most flexible way to try and deliver this project. If you could move on to the next slide, please. So, and I kind of already talked about this. And the primary reason that's gaining popularity is just the pure flexibility. I think a lot of the confusion comes when you hear build, operate, transfer. I talk about financing. When I really started studying the statute and doing some research on it, the beauty of it is you don't have to do, you can only do one of those things or all, right? You can build with it. You can actually put out an RFP through the statute just to operate a facility that already exists. You can do the financing privately, but you don't have to be public. So that is effectively just the beauty of this delivery method. It's the flexibility it affords versus blind bid that you have to accept low price. If you're otherwise a qualified, responsible and responsive bidder, because of the legal terms, you have to accept your price. This allows that flexibility of negotiation between both parties. It's a give and take. As mentioned, DOT can allow for design, but it doesn't have to. So again, in this is a case where we, the city and IEDC as partners are designing this infrastructure separately. So the DOT contractor will not design. However, because the plans aren't quite done, the DOT contractor will have some early involvement and look at the plans and maybe give us obviously input and ideas. And as Eric has said, schedule, innovation schedule is certainly something we're looking for here, and that's hard to do through a sealed bid process as opposed to open negotiation. Move on. Again, this is just more like compared to the design bid build, sort of what the structure looks like. It's one contract with the government entity who then contracts with everybody else underneath the bill of the project. So I've already talked about some of these, but I think key for the with the government entity, which is my perspective, is just the ability to select the developers who's going to construct this thing based on their qualifications, as opposed to just them being the low bidder. Again, an advantage is the ability for the owner to finance the project, but we're not doing that here. Early involvement of constructors and design. A lot of times the government entity does not have the wherewithal or the desire to operate the facilities, so the statute allows for that, as I mentioned. And then the ability to negotiate the various aspects of the project. The last point on that last slide was flexibility. I've talked a lot about it. We have to go again it, but I think my last bullet point on that slide is most important. As I think I put it internally, Eric and others, you can build, you can operate, you don't have to transfer, you can transfer. It's almost it's like an a la carte menu into the statute. So that's why we selected it. We hope it's our hope to engage with qualified teams to finish out the design, to figure out how we're going to get this project built, timely, in a quality manner. So that's why we're going through this process. That's the end of my presentation. Next question says slides, but maybe I don't know if the group wants to hold those to the end. But I'll be here throughout. I'm happy to try to answer the questions.
All right. So as you guys know, oh, wait, we have the slide. This was also in the RFP. The city requirements of the XBE components are still requirements. There are two persons, if you do have questions, that you can contact, and their emails are up here, and then we'll also post this. Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Joe.
Glad you joined us. Wow.
That was bad. Sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Joseph Lee from the Office of Minority Women in Business Development. If any of you did not get the pre-bid instructions, this is a document we hand out. Normally 4 pre-bids for RFPs, but this still kind of carries over to RFPs as well. If on the agenda, you want to write my phone number down next to my name and email address, it is 317-327-5257. Email, phone number, whichever way. Just to go over a couple of things. Obviously, as Nick said, whenever the city spends a dollar, we want to make sure we're giving opportunities to minority, women, veterans, and disabled owned businesses. The goals that the city's outlined are 15% minority, 8% women-owned businesses, 3% veteran-owned businesses, and 1% disabled-owned business enterprises. For a total of 27% minimum, every time the city spends a dollar on DPW projects, public-private partnerships, or a project like this. A couple of good notes is that You can find our list of certified XBE vendors. XBE covers everything at indy.gov/OMWBD. So indy.gov/OMWBD. Please use our list. We understand that a lot of you use iSquarefoot and Building Connected and all of it in the E-Plan room, etc. That's fine. You can still use those, but make sure you download our list, contact vendors through our list also, and verify if you have someone on one of those third-party sites and they say, oh yeah, we're certified by the city, go to our list, download it. It is updated the first of every month, and make sure that you verify that that company is certified. I had a company here recently spent $420,000 with a vendor they thought was certified, and guess what? They weren't certified. That's pretty tough when I have to tell someone, no, you can't count that expenditure towards XBE spend. Please don't let that happen to you. Please keep detailed records of each and every contract, including calls, emails, personal interactions, etc. Make sure you look on our list for someone's commercial useful function. And obviously this is not going to have drywall, but it's the example that I use all the time. If you're hiring someone to do drywall and their commercial useful function is painting, that's not what you're hiring them for. You're hiring them for drywall. But if their commercial useful function says that they can do painting and framing, drywall is not going to count. So make sure you're looking at their commercial useful function. Every little bit counts. I had someone tell me the other day, oh, it is just dumpsters. We're going to spend $50,000 on dumpsters. That's all. Well, that's $50,000 that can make a difference to one of our certified XBEs. So everything from engineering and architecture to street sweeping, to hauling, to trucking, to rebar, to steel fabrication, you name it, there's opportunities along the way. So make sure that you're looking at every scope and trying to use XBEs where possible. As the RFP, you're going to come to the RFP and your RFP response talking about who and how you're going to work with those XBEs. If you have any questions, please call me well in advance of the due date. If you are not sure about someone's commercial useful function, whatever the case is, don't make the $420,000 mistake and use them and commit to them when it's not going to work. Call me. I am here to help you. I am not here to make your life difficult. I'm here to help you, help answer questions, help guide you. A lot of you in the room, you have done this work before. Let's dig deep, make sure that we're doing everything we can to include XBEs where possible. But when you have questions, if you think, and also make sure that you're telling the people that are in the trenches with your company, make sure you're telling them that if they have questions, give them my name, my phone number, and have them reach out to me. We are here to help you be successful. Does anyone have any questions right now, or I will stick around till the end of the presentation? That worked.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No.
But it's nice to meet you in person. All right. Well, as Erica alluded to, the former GM stamping plant site is on the west side of the river in downtown Indianapolis. Also, as Bob mentioned, you know that there are many changes to the site that the Indiana Economic Development Commission is working on. A portion of the Crane Bay building was removed. The portion that's out there today will remain and be reused. The building pad that was out there from the GM stamping plant site has also been removed. There's stockpiles of concrete materials that are going to get reused, and the Elanco headquarters is well under construction. The roadways to be constructed as part of this BOT contract are Henry Street from Harding to Kentucky Avenue, Holly from Henry to Oliver Street, and the White River Parkway from Oliver to Washington Street. The current White River Parkway sits on top of the levee, and it includes that D loop, which is a little bit off to the page up there. The White River Parkway is getting relocated to the west. The levee remains. Okay. And then the Henry Street Bridge obviously is a new crossing of the White River, which provides that additional connectivity. This exhibit is straight from the RFP. We have broken the project into 3 segments, what we're calling the West Side Infrastructure Project Limits, the Bridge Project Limits, and the East Side Infrastructure Project Limits. The west side is Henry, like we talked about, but from Harding to the Western Bridge Limits. All of Holly Street is in the West Side Infrastructure, and then all of the work on the White River Parkway, including the D-Loop, is included in the West Side Infrastructure. The bridge project is the bridge and its approach slabs. And then the east side includes Henry Street, east of the bridge approach slab, all the way to its connection in Kentucky Avenue. As you may have heard from recent announcements, there is the Indianapolis Cultural Trail will now be placed on the north side of Henry Street from the White River Parkway all the way to Kentucky Avenue. Project description, this comes directly out of the RFP language itself. I'm sure you've read it, so we'll go into a detail on a few things. It does include new roadways on new alignments. You've seen that in the plans. Not everything's on a new alignment, but quite a few are. There is also much fill on the site. We have new utilities, power conduit, water main, sanitary sewer, communication ducts, and handholds and manholes. Stormwater management facilities are also included. There is an existing underground stormwater storage tank on the west side of the river, west of the levee, that is intended to be reused. Landscaping, lighting, streetscaping, all included. As I mentioned, on the north side of Henry Street will be the new segment of the Indianapolis Cultural Trail and the bridge. This is just a sample cross-section pulled from the roadways, from the roadway cross-sections of the plans that are available to date. You can see that the proposed roadway, this is Henry Street approaching the intersection with White River Parkway. You can see that it is much higher than the existing ground. You can also see with this that there are some utilities that are being constructed below the existing grade, as well as some utilities that will have to be built while the grade is being built up. As I mentioned, let's see, Harding at Henry is roughly at about the same grade it is today. On the east side of the river, Henry is roughly about at the same elevation that it is today. Henry and White River Parkway all build up so that they're about at the same height as the levee. Utilities and stormwater facilities, those are all part of the contract, and most everything is new. There are some existing utilities that will need to be coordinated, and coordination is already underway with those. Please note the following. The contractor is responsible for coordination of the utilities, new and existing. Once you are hired, that is all your responsibility. The contractor is also responsible for the installation of utilities. They're responsible for the acceptance of the utilities by the utility company. So once you build it, make sure the utility is accepting what they eventually will take over. And then the contractor is responsible for warranty items on utilities as they would for any other contract through the city. We did want to share some imagery so that all of you understand the excitement behind the project, as well as what's going in over there. The idea behind the design of Henry Street and White River Parkway is to create a linear park on the street, providing connectivity between the White River Innovation District and the Cultural Trail, a future White River State Park expansion, connection to the neighborhoods to the south and west, and then create excitement around future developments. There's many lots that are over there on the GM stamping plant site that are not allocated for development at this time, but are anticipated to be allocated for development very shortly. And you can see the introduction of trees, pedestrian and cyclist space, and some finishes that aren't your typical asphalt and concrete. Again, some imagery. This is at, I believe, the intersection of Holly with Henry Street. as you are aware, Elanco's project is being constructed. Their building is coming out of the ground now. There is many interface connections between those, so they are putting in high-end finishes. Elanco's main entrance will be off of Henry Street. And so it's pretty important that those high-end finishes are there, and that, we coordinate with Elanco when they open. Elanco also does have an entrance across White River Parkway that will connect over to the east side, which will become Future Park, where the Crane Bay is located. Again, the introduction of plantings, trees, pavers, and lots of other finishes that, again, are not standard asphalt concrete. Paul.
Hi, I'm Paula with August Mac Environmental. We have done quite a lot of work out here with the IEDC during this demolition project that is ongoing right now. So as you may know, the site's was used for industrial use for 100+ years, back to 1898, and was most recently used as the GM stamping plant, which ceased operations in 2011. The site's been undergoing RCRA corrective action investigations and oversight due to the hazardous waste that was stored on the property and has found its way to the soil and groundwater. So that is the RCRA corrective action is being managed by the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, IDEM, and that is being handled by a different entity. There's been numerous investigations from 2010 when it entered into the program to now. That included hundreds of soil and groundwater samples. So the site is very well characterized. And even after, their investigations during the demolition, August Mac found some data gaps for the purposes of reuse and operations that we were going at the site. So this is just kind of a map of all those little dots are investigation points on the site. And we have a few more added to it that you'll see on the next slide here in a second. But August Mac got involved in 2022 when IEDC took over and evaluated the previous environmental data and collected additional concrete and soil data that was necessary to facilitate the removal and demolition activities. So this figure shows the right-of-way plan that was alluded to earlier already. There were some areas that hadn't been sampled and characterized yet, so we went ahead of your work to pre-characterize these areas. Each of those locations are samples that we collected. We had analyzed for potential contaminants and all the way down to the proposed excavation depths. So, going approximately 20 feet below surface, we sampled at various intervals. So no matter where you're digging, we have a general characterization of that material. The soil results on this figure are color coded. And so based on the results, we characterize them in different classifications in accordance with the reuse approvals. The reuse approvals basically was a process we went through with IDEM to say, hey, here's our classifications. We've characterized the soil or concrete, and it's below, human health screening levels, and it can be reused on the site. So we detailed this in the soil management plan, and the beneficial reuse approvals were also in the bid packet. So I would highly advise that you at least look over that. And because it is probably a little different than maybe some other projects that you've been on with the different classifications and how it's managed and what we need to do. So on this map, the colors you'll see, especially on the right-of-way outside of this site, there's some varied colors. So the main roadway was colored with the most conservative classification, the highest level of contamination. So whereas you might have, the yellow is it's eligible for commercial reuse. And then below that, we have cleaner material that still has detection, so it's considered uncontaminated according to IDEM and can be reused in different ways. So we will be on site to help manage and facilitate that aspect of it. But obviously, based on historical operations, these 2-inch borings are used to characterize a large area, but you may run into localized, potentially contaminated material, either odor or oil or, something that is abnormal, not homogeneous with the rest of the material. If you encounter that, we need to kind of stop and assess how to manage that potentially impacted material, collect some samples. Again, August MAC will be there to assist with characterizing this material and any unknown potential impacts that might be encountered, and just help make sure that the management plan is being followed. So this figure shows the current monitoring wells on the site. We have, along with the RCRA corrective action, they have several monitoring wells to monitor groundwater on the site. That, there has been several that have already been abandoned that were in the way of previous or current projected activities. These wells, we believe, are outside of the right of entry. So they are protected by Jersey barriers. They need to be maintained and protected during the construction activities. If, it's determined that they may be in your way, you need to contact us and we can kind of figure out a solution there. But the RCRA consultant does conduct semi-annual groundwater sampling. So these wells are very important to that project. So this slide is very similar to the one that Cassie showed earlier, just kind of indicating the green hashed area indicates area underneath the roadway or sidewalk that you can place this reuse material. The reuse material was either soil or concrete that came from the site that again was analyzed and determined acceptable to be reused, under a cover. So this asphalt or concrete roadway is an acceptable cover according to IDEM. You can place it directly below the roadways. But August MAC will definitely need to be aware when you're placing this material, because we have to identify those coordinates to be able to report that at the end of the project to IDEM. We have environmental restrictive covenants on the site already that restrict, exposure to these areas. So that's nothing that you will need to worry about. But, although there are certain precautions that are, outlined in the big bid document with this reuse material, mostly it's, keep it above the groundwater, 2 feet above the groundwater. Reusing this material and utilizing this material that's already on site has the potential to help reduce some costs to the project, and rather than hauling that material off that you're excavating or hauling material on site from somewhere else.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. We also wanted to provide some imagery of the bridge. The bridge plans, as you may have noticed, are not as far along as the roadway plans are. So this will give you an idea of the bridge. This, as Erica mentioned, it's considered a somewhat architecturally significant bridge. This bridge is not your standard, I-70 highway bridge. The cultural trail is shown on the north side of the bridge here. There's a sidewalk on the south side, 2 lanes of travel. We do have plantings on the bridge. We do have decorative railings along with the crash barriers closer to the travelway itself. The rings, you can see the rings. Long story behind that, it's probably in the news. These are the same renderings that were from the public meeting that was held a few weeks ago. The bridge is still, like I mentioned, under design. We do have the permits. We have the DNR construction of floodway permit. And we also have the US Army Corps of Engineers permit already secured. Just flip through the imagery. There is lighting on the bridge. There's cultural trail lighting, what we call the cultural trail lighting, the grayish silver lighting that's on the single post. But there is lighting also included. You can see the mast arm there for the south side sidewalk, as well as lighting for the rings. These rings can be lit up in many different colors, in fact. The trail, the current trail that's there, the Greenways Trail, that trail will remain when the construction is completed. That's what. All right. Historical and archaeological components to the project. There has been an extremely accomplished team that has been put together to complete the archaeological study. We brought together experts in Indianapolis history and research. We have PhDs on the team, people who understand the history of African American cemeteries as it relates to Indianapolis. We also have a consultant on the team who's presented what lies beneath Diamond Chain. You can Google that if you're interested. Basically, the east side of the river is a burial ground. We'll get into a few things too, but you will be working with, the selected contractor will be working with the archaeological team, okay? We have to have an archaeologist on site at all times, because there is the possibility that something may be discovered, whether that's an artifact or actual human remains. A little bit about the history of the burial ground so that y'all don't get scared away. Activities will occur within the boundary of this burial ground, which is the former Green Lawn Cemetery. The project is located within a small portion of the burial ground. Only about 10% of our project, or I'm sorry, only about 10% of the burial ground will be impacted by our project. This was designated a graveyard back in the day in the earliest plats. It was also known as the first cemetery of Indianapolis. And there is some indication that African Americans were buried west of what's considered the burying ground on the slides here. There have been the burial ground reached its full extent in 1866, and then it began to be expanded to the north. Then the area transitioned from cemetery to other uses. In the 1870s, the burials were supposed to have stopped at the site because it had reached capacity, but it was not until 1891 when there was an actual bill to vacate the grounds. At the turn of the century, plans were made to transform the burial ground into a park. But since that time, the grounds have transitioned from cemetery to today's site, and we know much disturbance has occurred. We do know that graves were removed. We know that stones and markers were removed. We do know that fill was brought in. We do know that the park fell into disrepair. We know that the river has eroded the far western edge of the cemetery and an additional area of African American burials. We do know that fill from the east side of the river was moved to the west side of the river. There was the Federal League baseball park, but that was demolished 3 years later. We've had warehouses there in its current use. Prior to the Indy 11 announcement was Diamond Chain. They purchased the land in 1817, built an addition to its facility along the northern edge, and then Diamond Chain occupied the site until, I believe, May of this year.
Can I make one addition?
Yeah.
So you probably may notice Cassie talking about burial ground. It is a burial ground legally because it is no longer a cemetery. And the language you use to describe that is important because the laws tied to whether it's a cemetery or a burial ground are different. So this is a burial ground. It is not a cemetery.
And the point of this is to also say that there has been much use over time. All right, so how are we going to handle some of this during construction? Well, we're going to be monitoring during construction. What happens and how does this work? So whenever you're building in this area, we will have on-site archaeologists monitoring the excavation. If you find something, or if something is found, or if the soil type changes, we have a plan for that, okay? Work will have to stop. We do have to call different people like the Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology. We do have to call local law enforcement. And then those agencies tell us where we can continue to work. Okay, typically we would have to stop and move 100 feet away from where we're working. What happens if we encounter human remains? There is a possibility that we encounter artifacts, but not remains. What if we encounter human remains? Well, we do have, and when the shortlisted firms are selected, we do have additional information for you, but in general, we secure the area. We want to provide as respectful treatment as possible to anyone who is found at the site. Documenting of the human remains will happen. It is done by GPS to the sub-centimeter. Photographs will be taken. We will remove the human remains and send them to a secure facility at IUPUI. The goal is to remove the remains by the end of the workday, because we want to treat all remains respectfully during the documentation and removal process. All artifacts and any remains recovered will be respectfully removed and transported. Then they get analyzed by qualified professionals according to the laws, and the status of the human remains will determine the analysis that's provided. IUPUI conducts that analysis, and Dr. Jeremy Wilson is who's leading that up. And then once the analysis is completed, the human remains eventually will be reinterred at a local cemetery. So you will be working with the city's archaeological team to do this work.
And just to touch on, Cassie mentioned the change in soil. So the archaeologist is looking for changes in soil colors that would indicate human remains or artifacts. And so that's what they're looking for when they're on the scene.
All right, timelines for design and construction. This is straight from the RFP as well. Final design, we are expecting in July, procurement in August, and then construction will begin very shortly thereafter. As Erica mentioned, this is going to run through as quickly as possible through the city's procurement process. Substantial completion is tied to Elanco. We get a schedule from Elanco once a month. They are moving in and they expect to be substantially complete December 31st of 2024. It is tight. I see people laughing. Yes, we know that. It is possible though. We've analyzed this. Okay, the Henry Street Bridge. As I mentioned, the design is a little bit farther behind than the roadway design. August of 23 is approximately the 90% design, with final design in October, and then substantial completion in March of 2026. That is an entire year beyond the roadways. Timeline for the east side of the White River, procurement in August, construction beginning hopefully in September. We do realize that you have to have an archaeologist on site, and we do know that you're probably going to want to start digging as soon as possible rather than leaving this to the very last minute, because there's a lot of excavation and the potential to find things. Substantial completion for the east side is also March of 2026. I had another slide in here, but I don't think I got it. I did have one more slide, and I apologize, it's not on here yet. We have scheduled a series of meetings approximately once a week, a 1-hour meeting for the shortlisted contractors. That will begin the week of June 26th. The intent is that we are providing more information to those shortlisted contractors, and then you all will have an opportunity to provide questions in a confidential manner to be answered by the city, the IEDC, and the design teams. We also have scheduled a field visit for the shortlisted contractors. On the schedule, we had that the offerers are notified of their shortlist period June 21st. We have those meetings scheduled for, I believe it's June 21st or June 22nd. We're waiting on a couple more confirmations for some things to move around. Those are already scheduled and we will get those dates in here for you. And that is the end of our presentation. We'd like to open it up for any questions, if anyone has any. We are also still taking questions. And we will post additional answers to your questions on the project website by June 6th. But if there's any that you have today, we'd be happy to answer them while we're here. Yeah.
So is there an event that's coming out? DOT, nothing in here that talks about build, operate, transfer in here. As far as like, it talks about guaranteed maximum price. So that's what a BOT, that's how it works. The developer, the contractor, that's what the scoping period will be about, is negotiating a contract with a price. We are seeking a price to build all of this. BOTs are, that's how the BOT works. Now, there's a lot of contingencies here. That's why I told you about environmental, archaeological. The city will have some money set aside in contingency to address those. And then the various risks presented by those things is what's all subject to negotiation. DOT is nothing but a procurement.
There's no price submitted
No, I know.
on your July 12th, or I'm sorry, your June 12th submission.
It's fine.
Correct.
No time. Not seeking any private funds.
To encourage that we establish teams for this project. And you specifically mentioned that you can't use somebody that's on the team, whether it's Lockheed or VFS. You mentioned those engineers in particular. Do you see a need for our teams to include an engineer, designer? And if so, what would their function be?
You can answer that already.
I think we did. Let me pull up that response.
I think you addressed it, that the design will be completed by you, but you didn't address whether there's a potential need or desire for us to include one on the team. Wondering if how the city looks at that. If we brought in another designer, would that be of a benefit, or is that something you're looking for or not?
I mean, I think that you're not required to do that. I think that the design firms we've mentioned will be the designers of record. However, we think it could benefit you to get input from an engineer if you're evaluating innovations in schedule.
As far as putting a team together, would it be a benefit or a hindrance to the city for us to establish a group of contractors? One that specializes in earthwork and pipe, another that does asphalt and concrete, third that does the bridge, and then landscaping and electrical. Seeing how that would be a benefit based on the schedule to get everybody involved quickly, but you would lose some of your competitive pricing opportunities and that sort of thing. Does the city look favorably on a large team or a smaller team, or is that just for us to determine?
I don't know that we can answer that. I mean, that's the flexibility, right? I think we said that in the RFP because we're looking at a pretty complicated project that's involved coordinating with utilities, somewhat coordinating with the land coast construction, right? Right. So, whether a construction manager, an engineer, whatever professions might help. In negotiate back to the other gentleman's question, if you're selected, your team is selected right now, part of how you're gonna come up with your price for us is you will then be negotiating with all your subs, right, or all the providers of different aspects of the constructing these assets, right? Like the various ones you mentioned, right? They don't all have to be part of your team, but you will have the right, there's luxury or benefit of, and this is what benefits us in the long run, right? Is you're going to negotiate the prices with all those various trades and contractors on our behalf, essentially, to deliver us a price for us, as opposed to us doing it. Great. That makes sense.
It does. One other question on the utility coordination. You mentioned that it'll be thrown to the contractor. And I see that there's obviously water main, storm, sanitary, there's duct banks for communication or electrical. Beyond that, for like gas service or existing infrastructure, will you and your designers continue to coordinate that, or is the entire utility package turned over? I mean, with Elanco building and then the services they need, what are we actually responsible for?
Yeah, you're gonna get some additional documents. The work plans are in progress, so utility work plans for existing conflicts as it would be on any other city street project. Many of those are completed. The only company that's putting in their own facility is gas. Gas will not allow anyone else to build their facility. Okay, so everything else is in the contract. And then power and communications, they will pull their own lines. Everything else is intended to be constructed by the contractor. This has all been coordinated with Elanco's design team. All of those points of where they access Elanco's lot is all coordinated. It's already in those plans, and you will be getting additional information during the scoping period on the utility coordination that's been done to date.
Or coordinating what is being provided in design.
Yeah.
We're not doing any design work for utilities. If
No.
there's conflicts and things like that, we're not ultimately going to be responsible for that. We will bring it to.
No, you will be. Most everything has been, the new stuff has been designed to not be in conflict. If there is a conflict with new stuff, then you'd have to contact the designers. But you're scheduling, the contractor would be scheduling, when does CEG Gas come out and lay their line? Because they're actually up high. You see what I'm saying? So you're coordinating all that.
The contractor has zero power and leverage with those public companies as far as schedule goes. Is that something we can lean on you to help? Or what type of schedule relief will we have when somebody that we have absolutely no control over delays the project?
I think a lot of that's, the work plans will be in place. All the utilities know this is coming. I think what we were trying to say on that slide is, as far as constructing the facility, making sure it's inspected appropriately so that we say a water, right? The water company has some standards, right? And once it's tested, I'm sure if you were the contractor, you'd be responsible for all of that sort of thing, right? Building up to the utilities standards and the warranties that flow.
And we can get into some more detail in the scoping period as well.
Okay.
It's still evolving, so.
Okay. One last question. Will Lockmuir be putting together quantities for the work either currently or in the future?
Let us think about that one before we answer that question. And to be clear, the firms listed in the RFP that cannot be on a contracting team are the leads. Many of us all have sub consultants and they are not excluded.
One last one, sorry. Do you have any budgets that you're willing to share at this point?
We have budgets.
Just give us some idea of what we're dealing with.
Wasn't there a range in our thing?
No,
We took it out.
we took that out.
Let us try, we could probably get a range out there within the.
Believe there's a public on the 21 million share at some point.
What?
Yeah.
Keep going. I don't know where that number,
I mean, I'm actually not like the star or something.
I would not trust that number.
That may have been the cultural trail. That was it.
No, I was laughing at it when I looked at the song.
It's not 21 million.
They signed that paper.
Well, there's a separate project to extend the cultural trail. That number was completed. It's the wrong, they used the wrong.
Okay.
Based off the RFP schedule up there, July 19th, the shortlisted contractors will receive updated plans. What percent complete would you expect those plans to be?
The roadway plans will be, let's say 95% complete. Because they won't be exactly tracings yet, but the road plans will be pretty close, right, Ryan?
West of the river, yeah.
West of the river. East of the river, I'd say probably is more like 50. And then the bridge, where's George? What are we thinking in July? Because you're beyond stage 2, but
Beyond stage 2.
80.
80.
yeah.
I think it might, I think this might be worth saying too, because the various target substantial completion dates and all that in the RFP, if you notice. I mean, Elanco's headquarters is west of the river, right? So kind of looking probably most logical to build west and east. Because the bridge can come later. You have to have the roads through the length of village first, so. Something to consider in your thought process. I just want to clarify.
We do have more detailed information to share during the scoping meetings, once contractors are shortlisted. And then you'll be able to ask additional questions and we can share additional information as this design and coordination keeps moving forward. Yeah.
An idea during the scoping period, what that looks like in terms of shortlisted commitment in terms of, we talking meetings 2-3 days a week, 4 days a week, design meeting over. Teams meetings, they personally wants to meet. I understand it's going to be fast paced and intense.
Yeah, so we are looking at, and I pulled up my calendar here. We have blocked off 3 hours for a field visit to walk the contractors around because there is an active construction site on the west side. We can take you not across the river, but you can look at the river, and then the east side. We intend to get that opened and allow access for that. So that'll either be the 22nd or the 23rd of June. And then we jump right into offer meetings starting on Monday, June 26th. We'll have a 1 hour. Right now they're scheduled in person right here, where all 3 shortlisted firms or however many shortlisted firms come in. We have a short presentation of, maybe things that have changed since you saw the plans last, any additional information that has been provided. Those meetings would occur. We have a West Side meeting. We have a bridge meeting scheduled the following week. The next week we have, sorry, I gotta find them, a utility meeting. The following week we have an environmental meeting. The week after that is the East Side infrastructure. The week after that is archaeology. And the intent is that we would share information with you, provide you with additional specifications, things like that. If you would like to ask questions, you are more than welcome to. If you would prefer to ask questions via email separately, confidentially, that opportunity will be there. And then we would then provide responses. As far as if you need additional meetings, I think the city is probably open to that. We just don't have those all scheduled on the calendar right now. Yeah, it's not in there.
Well, we,
Yeah.
we didn't, because we don't know how those negotiations will go, but the target's take the contract August 23rd to the board, so. At that, for the.
Please continue to check the website. Questions were answered. Was it last week, early last week, or the end of the week before? The presentation slides will be up. We did receive, I think, maybe 2 additional questions that will get answered, and then we did take notes of your questions that you asked that we didn't answer yet. And those will get posted. All right, if you didn't sign in, please make sure you sign in so that we have the information. If we look forward to the scoping period and your submissions.